You know? So, like I said, we've been segregated kind of by nature, you know, and a lot of people have kind of preached over the years. People of all different types of people have kind of preached like nature did this to us to separate us. We should stay amongst people who are like us.
Hmm.
Um, and then over time, you know, depending on where you are, you know, you'll hear that from you know, a lot of different types of people. So I think really that it's that's in the back of people's minds. It's still kind of uh, keeping people apart. You know, not I don't look at my son or my daughter um, like they're biracial. I just look at them as like humans who have parents that have lineages that come from different places. You know what I mean? So it's,
Yeah.
but that's not how we look at that in this world.
Yeah.
You know, we're taught to look at it like um, there's a fundamental, huge difference between these people, and that's just not true. We all have the same ancestors.
Right.
They won't
At the
put,
beginning, there was one. There
yeah.
it had to.
There had to be like, and I guess really there had to be like two.
There had to be two.
There
Yeah.
had to,
Yeah.
you know, there had to be two that could give rise to
Yeah.
to the modern human, and you know that even gets into a place where you start to say, okay,
In a weird way, we're all brothers and sisters in a strange
we're
way.
all, but even in a different way, it gets you into a trial. You say, okay, well, when you go back, you have to come to the realization that we all have the same ancestors. And then if you go back even more, you start to realize that you and all of these animals and things probably came from a similar situation.
Yeah.
So really it gets to the point of how the question I ask myself every day is how much of the stuff that I experience, how much of it can I bring into myself? How much can I find connection with? You know, on a day where I can find connection with the trees, that's a good day. You know what I mean? Like that's a different day than me, you know, just moping around and feeling like the world is a horrible place and
Mm-hmm.
things like that. You know, it's about truth. It's about, but you have to be educated enough to understand that the reasoning for why, you know, there's a connection between things. And with people, that shows just how little we understand our connection to things. If you're willing to say that people are not connected because they have different skin colors, then you definitely can't see the bigger picture that everything I think in existence is connected.
I think, but that's kind of where religion too comes into that because it has a big effect on that because of the people's mindset over the years and how things were written down and how they believe in things and how they were taught.
You know, the Bible has a lot, I think, to do with why people, you know, I think it's kind of hard to separate race from enslavement, and that's why, you know, I'm just saying, like, in the Bible, you know, they never once said it's a bad thing that to enslave a person.
Yeah.
Out of all the infinite knowledge that was could be communicated, nobody had sense enough to say it's not cool to enslave a person. You know, they gave rules for enslaving people, and then the way that those kinds of things. It's funny because I was just on the way over here thinking about how certain words and things written down like thousands of years ago still have effect today. To me, that's actually what spirituality is. It's about what motivates people. What, you know?
It's like helping them continue their thought process, continue that.
Yeah.
You know, it's just pushing it forward and into the future.
Somebody wrote something years and years ago that is affecting a person right now.
Yeah.
You know, so it's when you have a situation, like the Bible, you have a situation where, a lot of the people who enslaved people in this country and in the other countries in the transatlantic slave trade, they thought that they weren't doing anything wrong.
Right.
They were like, hey, they were slaves back then. They had rules for it and stuff. Well, this is my justification. This is, and that's it's an unfortunate thing.
It's kind of mind-boggling.
It's pretty wild to think that something like that could be seen as a justification for treating a person completely differently than how you would want to be treated.
And the fact that that's how long ago, but you look at, I think it's Libya, and in Libya they are selling people into slavery.
I believe that, yeah.
And it's going on in 2018.
Yeah. Slavery is a thing that it has, the world as it is will never rid itself of enslavement because it needs enslavement on various levels. Looking at when you look at the history of the American slaves, I think that prepared me to understand the situation now, to understand how do you enslave a person's will? How do you use their will for your needs? That's what I feel like. I feel like the people who got the most money from slavery realized, hey, this is too good of a thing to just keep with this certain population. We should just do this to everybody.
And it becomes monetary. It's debt enslavement. They
say, hey, we'll give them a little bit of this money.
Yeah,
it'll never be anything close to what we're making, but we'll give them a little bit of money. We'll let them get cars and houses, and little trinkets and all kinds of stuff, and then these people won't look in the mirror every morning and say, hey, I'm a slave. Because I have stuff. I just got this new truck.
You gotta go take that job that you don't. You hate waking up in the morning.
It's the trade. It's the trade of, well, do you want to hate your life? And will you trade a love for your life for monetary security? And I think that's the game here. The game is keep making people act against their own best interest.
Yeah. Instead of having a balance, and that's another thing that you grow up hearing, that if you don't work and like a certain amount of time or certain this is a bad thing, or if you don't have a college education, right?
Yeah.
You're never going to get a good job. Like, these are all like kind of like myths to me that like we grew up with that are kind of crazy now, because then you create college debt problem.
Yeah.
You create all these things that people can take advantage of because of that mindset.
Yeah. And the thing about it is that I feel like even things like that, things like joblessness and things like that, those are seen as things to still further separate us.
Yeah.
To say, hey, look at that dude over there. He don't have a job. He's worthless. So really, you have to replace somebody's value system. Now it no longer matters that this is another living being. Now his life is devalued because he doesn't have a job. Like, some people, they'd be like, that makes perfect sense. I'm like, no, it doesn't, because if there was no money in the world tomorrow, he would have the same worth as you, or you would at least want to make that case.
Well, no, if money didn't matter, who would be the most important person in the community? First off would be the farmer, right?
Yeah.
Because he needs to feed the people.
Yeah.
You know, so who's next? You know, next is the guys working in the community, right? Because they're important, keeping the peace. You know, and so it's when you put a monetary value. That's what I hate about things. We put a monetary value on everything. Put a monetary value on our kids in school. Put a monetary value on the monetary value we put on kids in general is ridiculous, and it's so backwards when you look at the amount of money that is funneled into the school system. But when you look at the amount of money that's funneled into the suburb school system as opposed to the inner city school system, it's so misproportioned. And we do that by creating these PSSA tests because it's just perpetuates the system, and because one area is getting better grades, they get more money.
Yeah.
No, you take them out. You say this is how much money we're putting into the school system. There's 200,000 schools in the country. Each school gets an equal value. Who cares?
Yeah, it goes back to the concept of what is worthy.
Yeah.
These kids, these suburban kids who are living lives that are closer to what we want to continue. They have the preference that we put the attention on them, because those are going to be the people to perpetuate this society into the future, as opposed to these children in the inner city who live in hell, and we don't really want them to bring their hell to where we are.
Imagine, think about the people in Ephrata. Imagine if you said to them, "Hey, listen, your kids gotta go to school, but we got no heat today, and it's 30 degrees outside, and it's gonna be like 35 in school, but they gotta go in and learn."
Yeah,
That
can only happen to children who you've devalued. That's the only way that happened in Baltimore.
Yeah,
that people were like, okay, the fact that grown people couldn't come together to figure a situation like this out is pretty damning of just the entire way things are done. The fact that adults were like, hey, it's going to be pretty cold, but you're just going to have to get this.
Gotta bring your jacket. You gotta bring your winter jacket.
Do you know how much distrust they created in that situation? Like, nobody can be sitting in that situation as a child and thinking that somebody cares about
Absolutely.
them. There's no way, because everything in their world tells them that that's not actually what's going on here, that they're actually a part of a less valued class of people.
Absolutely.
And as long as that's going on, as long as things like that is going on, these kinds of protests and things, they'll always happen over time. I mean, when you look back to things like what's that, Tommy Smith back in the Olympics, when he had the Black Power hand up.
Was that Tommy Smith?
Wasn't
that I was thinking the guy that ran the hurdles. Didn't he run the hurdles?
That was Carlos. Was the other one? There was two of them actually. Okay. I think Tommy Smith.
Okay.
It's funny. My uncle, he was actually in that. He was actually in that Olympics.
Really?
Yeah. I guess he was at the hotel, I guess, when that happened.
Huh.
But yeah, he knew them. When you look back at that, you could say, in hindsight, you can look back and say, and be like, well, why was he doing that? Why did he feel the need to do that on not just the national stage, but the international stage? Why did he do that? And that was because, that was a time of, people were looking for civil rights. But the truth of the matter is that was just that time, that whole 60s era where it was turbulent, and people look back at that time as, one of the most important times for civil rights and things. That came out of so much more before it. So while that time is the time that's kind of like people look at that time and say, well, that's when it was really going on. But there was so much going on before it and after it, and into the present. We're still encountering our attempts to try to figure out this problem of why have darker people seem to be less valued in this society. That's the problem that will create. That's the head of the dragon. That's the problem that will create all other problems, that whether it be with the police or with education or with crime and murder rates and things like that. What is going on with the psyche of America? That's what nobody, I think, is still. Nobody still wants to look into. I mean, how do you change the mentality of people?
It's like every time, unfortunately, we have a shooting at a school, and they talk about all the kids that unfortunately die. Well, in Chicago and Washington, D.C., all these stuff is going on. There's somebody dying every day.
People die all the time.
Every day from gun violence. And how is it that they're not just as important as the people that die in these schools? And unfortunately, any kid that dies, it's horrible. But
horrible.
There's, people dying. It's more than one person a day on average that dies in Chicago from gun violence. Mm-hmm. But we don't talk about that. We focus on the other things. And Washington, D.C., the place where the people that are in charge are making right
down the street.
Right down the street. They, in 2017, had the highest murder rate in the country.
That's almost kind of like that's like a conspiracy theorist like dream evidence right there, that there's a situation going on here that looks like one thing and is actually something else underneath it.
Yeah.
The way that I was writing a little, there was a time when I was writing a book just about it was just about my observations of things. And there was a chapter I was writing about how America to me seems like a mansion. It's like there's this huge mansion and full of all this opulent, like shiny stuff, and there's a lot of people working to maintain the mansion. But there's like this one room where people aren't giving keys to it, and it's like the filthiest, nastiest place that a person could ever it looks like a bombed out crack house in this room, and nobody wants to admit that room exists.
Yeah.
And then some people are like, hey, the room exists.
Right.
And some people are like, no, the room doesn't exist.
Yeah.
But that room is not, no matter how, it's almost kind of like that room would devalue the entire mansion, because it's like, well, you got this kind of stuff going on. This thing is a radioactive hotspot. Everybody who's in this mansion is getting like radiated and with disease.
Yeah.
And there's still for many people, I think, on the right and the far right, they seem to be people who just don't want to they don't want to admit that room exists.
Yeah.
They would say, well, that's just the way that it goes. It's like we have to deal with those things. It's just kind of how in our personal lives, we go through so much trauma as people and never really deal with it. We don't we're not asked to deal with it. We're asked to put our heads down and to continue on being your function, be your role, be the worker.
Yeah.
That's your main a person's main identity is, you know, the worker. I'm not saying that's how it is for everyone, but if you think about that, you know, how many other things are you putting as a role? You know, how many things are you putting behind that? You know, as a father, as a family member, as a person who.
Well,
You know,
we almost assess people's worth by how much money they have.
and that's the grand
That's
delusion.
that's the problem.
That's the delusion. The delusion is that people think that you can put a monetary amount
Yes.
on the worth of a human being or anything else.
Yes.
Because now it's, you know, when you go outside, when you go outside of humanity, it becomes, well, how does this impact the animals, and how does this impact the lands, and you know, we're funny. We like to act like the plant life in the world isn't life. We just act like it's, you know, it's there, you know, get it out of the way. It's like, no, this stuff makes sure you breathe.
Right.
Like, what do you
right.
mean? Like, so that's the problem with enslavement. It's once you enslave one thing, it becomes advantageous to enslave anything possible. To the point where you do that on, you know, you scale it up and do it to everything.
It's almost like the craziest master plan ever, right? You create this idea and have people growing up thinking this way, and then you have the ultimate thing at the top, the money,
Yeah.
and you use it as a form of control.
Yeah.
And it's almost it's this plan that comes together, and it's kind of crazy, and you see it, and the fact that and you build on people's greed.
Yeah.
You know,
absolutely.
and you make that the most important thing.
You absolutely do that, and that's the reality of it is that greed is one of those things that's like a disease. Like it like you can there can be a time in your life where you're not motivated by greed, and then who knows, maybe your friend comes over and he has this new crazy car and things like that, and all of a sudden your thoughts start, well, I gotta like get on that level and stuff, and then that becomes, like I said, that's spirituality to me. That's motivation.
Mm-hmm.
That, you know, any ways that a person is motivated, to me, that's a spiritual concept, because now if you money certainly is a spiritual concept. Like it's saying, okay, if I have a lot of money, what you can imply about me is that I've given so much time and energy to the pursuit of making lots of money, that's really what I worship. That's really, you know, that's really what I'm about. I'm about making money. And there's a lot of people who have no qualms about saying that, you know, that this is their number one function. I'm trying to make as much money as possible, and I get it in this world. Like, I'm not trying to say that that you're stupid or anything, but I am trying to say that
I also think that a lot of those people end up being. Not a lot of those people. I know a couple of those people, and a lot of times, most of them are unmarried with no children, and that's their life. Like, that's what they do, you know. And so, in some ways, they're fulfilled, but in a lot of ways, they're empty.
Yeah,
you know.
It's, you know, it can be, I think, very intriguing to think that you won't have any kind of monetary hang-ups in your life. And there's people who who spend a lot of time and energy in trying to make sure that happens. But what people forget is that all it takes is for a moment in a day for everything to change in your life.
Absolutely.
So no matter if I don't have a lot of money, or if I do have a lot of money, there still has to be a core to my life that exists outside of that paradigm. That
mm-hmm.
you know, I don't I'm not a person who feels like I don't think money is going anywhere anytime soon. Um, but at the same time, I also understand that because of that, this false assumption that someone with no money means less
Yeah.
is going to continue. You know,
And
it's unnecessary.
that's kind of, the cryptocurrency stuff is like almost a way for us all to get a chance to be in at the ground level,
Mm-hmm.
right? The other economy that is like the stock market and big companies and stuff.
The
That's
next thing. Yeah.
that's we have no opportunity to get in there. For us to get into the stock market, we need like $25,000 in a license.
Yeah.
How many people got 25 grand laying around and
Yeah.
and can go work for a company and have a license to do so?
Worthy people. That's the people
Right.
who do it. The
Right.
ones who are worth something. They look at what they've done with their life.
Right.
They worked 70 hours a week, and they didn't care about their mom's birthday, and they didn't. You know what I mean? Like they didn't.
Yeah.
They
It's
got it. They that's the American.
Jeff Bezos,
dream,
the
I
guy
guess.
from Amazon. They say all he does is work. That's great. He's one of the most successful people in the world. But at what cost?
Yeah, I mean, I get it. I'm not trying to talk badly about people
Yeah.
who are driven or anything like
No,
that.
no.
But at the same time, it does seem easy in this world to become unbalanced, and I know more so than anybody that I've been unbalanced in the other direction. So it's like, it you can become unbalanced, but the good part about it is that if you can realize that you're unbalanced, you can start to make strides to become more balanced.
Yeah.
And a lot of the people who I've known who seem to just seriously only care about how much money they have, that usually, in my opinion, comes with some sort of addiction and things of that nature. I think in order to be the optimal worker or something, you probably are a medicated person. Because they're introducing you to a situation that isn't natural in any way. They're just saying, so hey, yeah, you might need some of those speeders for so you
Yeah.
can stay up and
Yeah.
get through
I-
get through the ridiculous amount of work that you just did.
Well, some people that is their addiction is work.
Yeah, that is another thing.
And whether it's healthy or not is whatever, but they are, I mean, the workaholic thing is very true.
Absolutely.
So and some people have a hard time even thinking in a different way. I mean, they even when they're not working, they're thinking about work.
Yeah.
And so it's kind of crazy.
I've never seen this. I've never seen it really matter so much that how much money you have. Like, I remember, my aunt, she passed maybe it was a couple years ago, and I remember just realizing like nobody stood up there and said, well, she had saved this and this amount of money by the time she was 20 and things, and eventually she had this amount of money in her bank account when she passed. Like, nobody said anything like that. So at the end of the day, people are going to remember you for things that don't really have probably much anything to do with money.
Yeah.
Not to say that that I understand that getting it can provide certain comforts and safeties, but at the same time, I'm trying. My aims have always been to affect change on a level outside of myself, not just something that affects me and those around me. But more or less a change that can help the bigger situation. I think a lot of people might think that who do you think you are? You know, like you're pigheaded or something for believing that you might have the ability to affect change in the world. But if that's the case, then there is, like, you know, like we said earlier, then nobody will ever understand the fact that it's us, the people who are here and living,
Yeah.
that have to be the people to form the world in the ways that we would like to see it.
Yeah. I mean, it's perspective. It's for me, it's if your value of spending time with your family, or that's your perspective, then it's your success in life, or like what you're saying, you want to make difference. That's the perspective you take, and some people have perspective of, if you earn a certain amount, you're successful, but that's not everybody's perspective.
No.
And the fact that we live with the idea that money is success is a lot of times how we get to the place where we are now,
Yeah.
where we find problems, and put that idea on people, where there's, maybe somebody's very successful in a different way, and it's
Yeah.
okay. It doesn't matter as long as you're successful in some way.
To me, success is about not hating your life, because no matter who I've seen, no matter how much money they've had, if you aren't enjoying your life, for all you know, the only life that you'll ever have, then what did you do with life? Like, what did you do? Like, I mean, some people say, well, I dedicated it to my family and things like that. And I get that. But at the same time, you only have so much time to do the things that you really mean to do, as opposed to the things that people convince you that you need to do. People have. I remember there was a time in my life where I became really understanding of the fact that there was a lot of different people in my life who had their own picture of what I was and what I could be. So it's like, well, you should do this. You can be that. I'm not saying that they always were bad ideas, but I also received animosity from people who couldn't understand why I didn't want to be the thing that they thought I should be. I don't think that it's, I'm glad that I learned that from them, because it let me understand that one day my children might come to me and say, Dad, I want to be something that is completely kind of outside of your ability to understand. And from learning that personally, I hope what I learned is, in that situation, to be able to say, hey, I may not completely understand it, but if it's something that you feel like you need to do in your life, that's what you need to do. You need to do that thing, because all the rest of this stuff, it, it could, all it takes one moment.
Well, I mean,
be done.
Look at the jobs, and the jobs that pay the most right. Do we pay a social worker a lot of money? No.
No.
Do we pay teachers? Most teachers don't make that much, unless
police
you're.
Don't even, police don't really make that much. Like,
unless you're a state trooper. State troopers make reasonable, but
yeah,
if you're otherwise, you don't make that much. I mean, look at the military. Probably the military, for what they do, they get to retire if they stay in, but they are risking their life.
Yeah.
So,
I always wondered, like, I remember my dad telling me the story about how he became a police officer. And he was talking about how I think he said that he had been trying to become like a security somewhere, and he knew a guy who was going to take the test, the state police test. And he, I guess, had gone before, and I don't know if he failed it or something, but for whatever reason, he didn't do it. So the guy convinced him to go and do it again, and that was how he ended up being a state police officer. And it makes me wonder, like, how, I'm sure that there's people who coming from all different kinds of walks of life, all different kinds of experiences becoming police officers. It seems to me that there needs to be, it can't just be, well, he wanted to be a police officer and he passed the tests and all this stuff. It has to be something different, because now we're starting to see cases of, like, I remember that case with that guy in Las Vegas. Oh wait, not Las Vegas. I don't know if that was Vegas. Where was that at? Where the cop? Do you see where a cop? He told I guess the guy that somebody had called and said that he was pointing a gun out the window. Actually, he was like an exterminator, and that was like his gun. Like, it wasn't even really a gun.
It was just like a spray, something he was spraying with. Yeah.
And then they released the body cam footage, and like he told the dude, get on the ground and crawl here and stuff like that. And then the dude, his pants slipped, and he went to go pull him up, and the cop just fired on him, just all kinds of times.
I didn't see that one. No.
No, I mean, I was, and just when you listen to this man, the way he's talking to this dude, like he's clearly not trying to assess the situation. He's already decided what was going on in that situation. So he was expecting,
it's premeditated.
And this guy was just like, please don't shoot me. Like, he's just like, I don't like.
Did the guy die?
A gun. Yeah, man. He just killed him right there. Just killed him and didn't. I mean, they don't show his face because he's got his body cam on. But yeah. I heard after it happened, I think he like radioed back, let him know something happened. But I didn't hear any remorse in his tone. It's just like, and then online, reading comments online is like dangerous.
It's not good.
It's a dangerous thing, because then people are like, oh, idiot, should have had better pants on. Your pants shouldn't have slipped and stuff. Should have listened to. They said he didn't comply when a police officer told him to get on his knees and crawl to him, and he was in the process of doing it. And then they're like, he didn't comply. He did that with his hands. It's like, if the people, all right, police officers are the closest thing to like superheroes that exist. It's like, if you're gonna have that type of power and if you're gonna be that powerful, the people who are these people need to have extensive psychological
should be the cream of the crop. Should be like,
you shouldn't just be some dude who's really like, all right, he passed the test and stuff, but really he's waiting for this moment to just blow somebody away.
Well,
his badge will give him an excuse. That's just that's.
I often thought like policemen should be like, one requirement is they grew up in that community they want to police.
That's the absolute. I think if there's one thing that they can change, like without having to do a whole bunch of work, because I know that they don't like really working on it.
Right.
Make sure that the people who police these places are familiar with these places and have a general understanding of where they're at, because that's, I think, a lot of time, like if some dude from the suburbs pulls up in a side of town where he doesn't understand the other underlying situations going on there and stuff, of course he's going to be scared, because he's going into a situation that is probably to him just as scary as war.
Like, if I had to rewrite how the cops were chosen or what they needed to do, I would make it that they work 4 days a week, and the fifth day they work, but they're doing work in the community. So now they're building relationships with the community, and they come from the community would be the other thing.
Yeah.
So between
Absolutely.
those two things, I think that would be a great thing, because now they're building relationships with the people that are in the community, which would help them.
Yeah.
You know, they would be more productive with working with the people, working, you know, understanding what's going on, and we don't have to have, you know, people getting shot. We can make phone calls. We can talk to people. We can say, what's going on? Why is this happening?
Yeah.
As opposed to get out of the car and shoot somebody, because that's the first thing that we think about doing. And and part of to me too, is when we create all these stories of people getting shot and people, you know, the media twisting it into whatever they want to twist it in, it puts everybody on edge.
Yeah.
You know, puts the people that are getting pulled over on edge, because now they're worried that they're going to get shot. So they may do something that they typically wouldn't have done, you know, and because they're nervous. Puts the cops on edge, because now they're worried they're going to get accused, whether they're good or bad. Mm-hmm. You know, so it puts everybody on edge. So it creates an environment where something bad is going to happen that may not have happened. You know, and so it's the idea of taking somebody that lives in Ephrata and making them a Baltimore cop is just madness to me. Yeah. They don't know anybody in Baltimore. They don't understand how the community works. They don't know. There's leaders in the community, right, that are outlets to the community that they could work with. And that's just strange to me.
Yeah, it's to me. I noticed that was one of the biggest things that the Black Panthers talked about. They were against what they considered an invasion of their communities, because you have this occupying force coming in, policing without understanding what's going on here on deeper levels.
Yeah.
I just come here to arrest people. I don't really know what's going on here. And what I think that's caused is, I think that's key in the devaluing of people. The devaluing of people in that situation seems to have come largely from the fact that you have people coming from somewhere else into these communities, and not like you'll see things going. You know, anybody who spent time in the inner city understands that there are things that go on that don't happen in suburbia. And just because they're going on doesn't mean that they are threats. Like that, it doesn't mean that it's, you know, it's a threatening situation. But to someone who's not from there, they can easily believe that there are threats everywhere. You know that the people there have a general distrust due to history. You already understand that there's an adversarial situation going on. So, like you said, it makes everybody on edge a little bit more. So I just don't understand how nobody ever thought, hey, maybe the people who come from these, who are comfortable in these situations, who are not in the situation just looking over their shoulder all the time and looking at this guy like a potential suspect and things. Let those people police what they understand. And also let people from these situations, you know, if I was a police officer, I would kind of, you know, if I had the task of respectfully policing where I come from, I would look at that as a very prestigious type of situation. But on the flip side of that, when you are introduced to a community as an occupying force,